We are gonna break down all the level 40 tanking specs in the game really quick, and I am gonna tell you which ones are gonna perform very well and which ones are not gonna perform very well. This is not a tier list. We are gonna do a proper tier list once we actually get the launch. This is more like a most likely to succeed section in the yearbook. Remember that voting thing? Something like that. We are gonna start with a spec that you most likely do not expect here. And that is the Beast Mastery Hunter, okay? As you know, the Beast Mastery rune over here will turn your pet's growl into a full-on taunt. But the Beast Mastery pet is gonna have a lot easier time holding aggro anyway, because they are getting 15% more crit, they are getting this new ability Intimidation that gives them a lot more threat, they are getting Frenzy, which is basically Flurry from the warriors but for pets, 30% more attack speed, and they are getting 50% more damage in Bestial Wrath. Now, before you go crazy in the comments, although please do, I need the engagement, I am not trying to say that you're gonna see pets full main tanking no Meregan. That's crazy. What I am trying to say is a lot of hunters are gonna go Beast Mastery for the damage anyway, and now you got this pretty decent tank in the form of your pet laying around with a 3-second taunt. It is gonna be a lot more practical for people to use hunter pets for the mechanics. All the tank related mechanics like a tank swap or something like that, they can easily do that. Depending on how the encounters end up working, it is very likely that hunters are gonna be the off tank of the raid. Next class to talk about is the Warlock tank. Alright, the Warlock tank is gonna go full on demonology, and I am saying he's gonna go full on demonology because of this. First of all, it is demonic sacrifice. When you sacrifice your Void Walker, you regenerate 3% of your health every 4 seconds. This is huge because if you're gonna be a tank, you are gonna be stuck in stamina anyway, so you are scaling off your stamina, thus getting a lot of healing. And remember, healing is AoE threat. And the problem with the Warlock is that if you look at the talents, they are not gonna get any new AoE abilities. So getting that extra AoE from the healing that you get for 30 minutes, this thing is constant. This is huge. Post-edit Medina, I forgot to say here that you can also sacrifice an imp for 15% extra fire damage. This will only work on single target because there is no fire AoE as of yet. But I can see many fights where you wanna sacrifice an imp to get the single target threat boosted a little bit. Of course, the biggest talent to look out to is this one over here, Master Demonologist, 10% less taken damage, and Soul Link here, 30% damage goes to your Void Walker, so you can sacrifice it just before it dies. You can get, in theory, so much tankiness if you go full Demonology. If threat becomes an issue, however, you might be seeing people going full Corruption and taking Life Tap, because remember, you already got a Life Tap here, your there you go, Metamorphosis rune. It gives Life Tap a lot more mana, and at the same time it multiplies, so this one here, another 10%. You could even take 20% here if you don't go Firestone, for example. And the reason I want to point this out is not because of the mana itself. The thing about Life Tap is that mana generation is also global threat, just as if it were a heal. So yeah, you might see people not going Soul Link at all, ignoring the 10% extra tankiness and going for this just for more AoE. I think if I were you, I'd probably take the 10% less damage and stuff, but we are gonna see what Warlocks decide, we are gonna see. But overall, the Warlock is not gonna get a huge threat increase next year. There is nothing really new that they are gonna get, especially AoE. If you really look at it, compared to everybody else, they might fall behind a little bit on the threat department. They are getting a lot, and I mean a lot, tankier if you take the tankier talents here, so that's a plus. Personally, I really hope they get some really nice threat rune to compensate, because otherwise they are gonna fall off. Let's talk about the warrior though. The warrior is gonna be the exact opposite. He's gonna get absolutely no tankiness and he's gonna go full glass cannon, or at least I think so. Why? Because as you know, your threat doesn't scale of anything here. You only get tankiness on protection. The only real good talent that you get in protection is Defiance, 15% extra threat. Shield Slam is worthless unless there's a new rune that comes out and changes it. It's gonna be absolutely useless. Devastate is just broken. Devastate is 90% of your weapon damage, so you are incentivized to build as much damage as possible, and I do not see that changing. I talked about this in my previous video, but I think the warrior is gonna go something similar to this. and he's probably... you might see some Fury builds, okay? I don't want to rule out Fury entirely because Flurry is a really nice talent, but I think that most warriors are gonna prefer to go Sweeping Strikes over here because this is so much more rage, so much better AoE. I don't think you would want to pass this out, and you get 5% chance of Wind Fury if you go Sword, and it looks like the tanking weapon is gonna be a Sword this tier, and 5% crit over here, so you're seeing right here, damage, damage, damage. This is much more than 15% extra damage, just let alone these two talents here. 5% more damage, 5% more damage multiplied with the 5%, so it's like 11% extra damage between these two talents only, and you got Sweeping Strikes, you got more crit scaling here, you got more rage with the anger management, like you got better heroic strike, so much more than 15% extra damage, which is what your Defiance talent will give you in threat form. There might be some builds similar to this. Personally, I do not think this is gonna happen at all, because a lot of the mobs in Omeregan are gonna be immune to deep wounds, and I got this a lot in my previous video. You do not go arms for deep wounds, you go deep wounds for impale right here. 20% more scaling on your crit, are you stupid? Deep wounds is a nice plus, but that's not the biggest part of the whole thing. Sweeping Strikes alone is gonna be like double your rage generation in a cleaving fight. Why would you not take Sweeping Strikes? Don't get me wrong, 60% weapon damage on a dot is excellent, is great, but you do not need it for arms to be really good. So the only reason that I could ever see people going prot this tier and actually going for all the tankiness here is that if they changed something, a new rune for Shield Slam or something like that, or maybe something that scales of block value. Shield Slam scales like crap, it is a useless ability. Before runes were a thing, before Devastate was a thing, people were not going Shield Slam, they were going like Fury prot, because it was this bad. TLDR, Warrior is getting a lot more threat, it is getting 0 more tankiness, and it is probably gonna pump next tier a lot, so get ready for that. Now we're gonna talk about the Druid. Let's take a quick look at this. Bears are not gonna get any meaningful Keystone talent. As a matter of fact, the only Druid spec that ever takes a Keystone talent is the Moonkin, because it's right there, you need it for the Moonkin form. But everybody else, Restos do not take Swiftment, and most Ferals do not take Leader of the Pack. I mean, you can take Leader of the Pack, it's a nice talent, but right now the build that is gonna be most likely to work out, I just do not see anything else playing out here, is people going for natural weapons, 10% damage, Omen of Clarity. This is basically clear casting, this is free abilities, 0 cost. How could you compete with free mangles, free moles, free whatever? And just going here for Feral to get the 15% extra threat on Bear. To give it a little context, before, when we were level 25, we had to choose between going all these nice talents here, like the 6% crit and the extra rage when you crit here, or Omen of Clarity. So it was pretty bad. You had to choose between 15% threat or 10% damage. There was no winning here. Now what we are gonna see is this build and this build merging together at level 40. Personally, I would take something similar to this, and then I would take Furor here so we can do Cat. Also, here this is for Cat basically, but you get a little bit of rage when you go Bear too, so that's nice for starting a pool. You can Cat and Bear, really competitive with this. It doesn't matter, what I'm saying here is that Bears are gonna scale 10% harder, and pretty much nothing else is gonna change out of them. They are getting charged now, I mean, that's nice, we already have an interrupt, but we got another, yay! Bears are also getting an AoE taunt now at this tier, which they desperately needed. Warriors had Cleave, Bears got Swipe. Swipe is useless, it does like 30 damage, so having an AoE taunt and just being able to use like Torn damage and taking all the rage from all the mobs hitting you is gonna help a lot. If anything, I see like a big loser here on the AoE department, and that's the Warlock for that very reason, because Warlock was the only spec that had an AoE taunt before. Meanwhile, the Bears and the Warriors are getting an AoE taunt, and in my opinion, they are still pretty underwhelming tanks. So yeah, let's hope that the Warlock is gonna get a really good rune, otherwise it's gonna suck. Now let's go over the Paladin. Now the Paladin is the one spec here that I cannot quite figure out. And I do not say that because I think there is not gonna be a good build. The contrary, I think there is many good builds that could play out. And honestly, I do not understand the Paladin well enough to tell you which one is gonna be. Most people are going Consecration at level 25 and taking Redoubt because Redoubt is so broken. So you might see something like this where they go Consecrate and they take the threat modifier of Righteous Fury and the 3% more damage, I mean hit. It's really good. They also get Kings here. This is likely to be the go-to spec. Like Paladins are supposed to tank the trash anyway, so that makes sense. Otherwise, I can also see if they get a new AoE. I don't think Divine Storm is strong enough for AoE right now, but if let's say they get a new AoE rune, maybe you can see something like people going Reckoning over here to do a cajillion damage. We're not gonna take defense if you're going Reckoning. We're gonna take, let's see, shield specialization. No, what am I saying? Armor, and maybe taking Holy Shield here with the nice talents. And 4% more damage. This could work out, a very aggressive tanking build right here. The only thing that this is missing is Consecrate. So if they get an AoE, let's say they get a new AoE ability on the runes, people are gonna go deep prot like this and getting a bunch of damage. They might even go like red like this and take strength instead. Something like this could work out too. Maybe even take Blessing of Sanctuary and one-handed weapon spec. Wherever you look at it, there is so much stuff that you are missing out on. This is what I hate about the prot Paladin in vanilla, that you gotta choose between Consecration or being a tank. Basically what I am trying to say with the Paladin is that Paladins are gonna go for whatever the new rune doesn't get them. If they get a bunch of tankiness, they get like a new melee single target ability, they are gonna go into Consecrate. If they get a new AoE, they are not gonna go into Consecrate, they are gonna go deep prot, or they might even take a couple strength talent here or Blessing of Might here and just go for single target damage and commit to it. I think they got a lot of potential. I think the prot Paladin, whatever comes out, is gonna do pretty good because prot Paladins get really strong later on. Next up is gonna be the Shaman. Now, as you know, the Shaman, you could go no talents and just take this stupid rune right here. This rune is so dumb. Rockbiter threat has already a threat modifier on it, and you take 50% more threat with this rune and a bunch of tankiness. You're immune to critical hits and stuff. This rune is carrying the tanking Shaman. It is so overtuned. The tryhard tanks right now, they are going dual wield, so they can do 10% more damage. I mean, they're doing more than 10%, it's 10% hit. So you're basically hit capped on your main hander and you get enough hander to do even more damage now. And they got Lava Burst, which is a really nice AoE. Shamans are perhaps the strongest AoE tank in the Horde by far. They are now gonna get 10% more damage and they are gonna get the chance to parry and a bunch of dodge. So this is nice. Basically the biggest talent they are gonna get is Flurry here. They could only get one talent here. Now they can get the full talent, 30% more attack speed when you crit. That is really strong. And they are getting Storm Strike. Storm Strike is nice. If you look at it, it increases nature damage dealt, and your main spell that you cast is Earth Shock. So that is gonna help you. 20% more damage is nothing to sneeze at. So what is this? 30%, 10%, another 20%. That is like 80% more damage multiplicatively of all of these modifiers here. They are gonna scale pretty good. They might become like the strongest single target tank again. Their AoE is gonna fall off because this thing only affects like 4 targets, so that's not great. But otherwise, the Shaman is here to stay, it's not going anywhere. So if you wanna roll a Shaman tank or you're scared of the next tier, it's a good time to start. Okay, I guess we got every single tank here. Yes, every single tank, including the Hunter Pet. There is nothing else. I'm kidding, there's the Rogue. Of course we got the Rogue, god damn it. Well, it's the Rogue. It just sucks. It's useless. It's not gonna get any better. I could break down the talents here for 2 hours. There is nothing I can make work here. I said it before and I'm gonna say it again. The Rogue doesn't need a new rune to get better. It needs 2. That's what it's gonna take for the Rogue to not be a complete meme anymore. It is gonna need some sort of AoE threat first, and then it is gonna need something to change how combo points work, because combo points do not work for a tank. Like, I just cannot understand how Blizzard designed this class without thinking. This is so dumb. Okay, basically, for you that don't play Rogue, I don't play Rogue, I play a cat, but it's the same thing. When you get combo points on a target and you change target, you lose all your combo points. Guess what, idiot? Tanking is all about swapping targets. You're cycling through targets, getting one threat on one threat on another. You're trying to play whack-a-mole and just balance out the threats so you get threat on every single mob when you do an AoE pull. And rogues actively get punished by their own class mechanics every time they try to be a good tank. And on top of that, this is not a deal breaker, but they really need it too. They need something to survive magic damage. All rogues get is some armor and a lot of dodge. And that's not good enough. Like, you get magic damage, you're still a normal rogue for that. You're still gonna take full on damage on that. Not to mention that tanking talents cripple you from DPSing. If you take a tanking build, you cannot really change runes and DPS like any other class, right? Like, if you take the warrior, it's probably a decent DPSer if you take the rune swap. If you take the bear druid, it's almost the exact spec as a cat. You can go cat on the bear druid and you're gonna do great. The only other spec that cannot go DPS when need be is the protection paladin, and that's it. So if you look at the rogue in a vacuum, you would think, okay, this is a nice off tank. It would work great if the rogue should just DPS and be the off tank for whatever fight and then just go back to DPSing, but you can't. So it is not possible to be an off tank as a rogue either. You get a main tank and they suck at that too. They have absolutely no niche where they work. And on top of that, basically the way they work is they get a lot of dodge. And what happens if you lose the coin flip of dodging 3 times in a row? Where you die. It is very clear that Blizzard didn't spend one afternoon thinking about how the rogue was gonna work. Otherwise they would have known this stuff. This is just obvious common sense, something that Blizzard doesn't really have anymore. Let's hope they get some love. Actually no, screw the rogues, what am I saying? Even the rogues in my comments are like, you are spot on, man, this sucks. Subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.